Discover how a hidden encounter in a closet transformed a woman's life at an amazing party. Sarah stood in front of her full-length mirror, feeling the weight of the dress, a hand-me-down from a well-meaning friend. It wrapped around her like a second skin, accentuating her insecurities and reflecting back the exhaustion. The scent of coffee mixed with her unwashed scrubs hung in the air. Another day spent tending to others was stretching into another night filled with doubts and despair. Each morning, the steps to get to work followed a routine that felt scripted. Wake up, drive, nurse patients, drive home, repeat. The demands of the clinic were relentless, leaving no room for her to breathe, let alone dream. Somewhere deep within her, the quiet voice of a gifted artist, long stifled, whispered that perhaps there was more to life than this. With her son, Evan, now a teenager who seemed more absorbed in his world of video games and friends, Sarah felt both pride and an unsettling sense of solitude. She often wondered if he saw her struggles, if he recognized the sacrifices made to keep his world whole. But his tight-lipped acknowledgement only added to the heaviness. As her friend Caroline urged her to attend the charity gala, Sarah wrestled with the idea, feeling like a fat fish out of deeper waters, a mere bystander in a life meant for those admirable individuals who could glide through such spaces with ease. Before she could voice her hesitation, a sense of obligation kicked in, and she found herself driving to the gala. The affluent venue sparkled like a distant star, and as she entered, the laughter of the crowd mingled with the sound of clinking glasses. She clutched the edges of her dress tightly, wishing she could blend into the luxurious background rather than stand out under the spotlight of scrutinizing gazes. Conversations ebbed and flowed around her, echoing expectations and judgment as she felt the world circling her like vultures. This was not her habitat. She wasn't supposed to be here. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Finding refuge in an unmarked closet, Sarah sank against the cool wall, her heart racing. The claustrophobia of the heavy emotions closed in on her. Why couldn't she break free from the judgments? Why did she feel the need to hide, even here, among people who didn't know her struggles? A flicker of hope surged when she unexpectedly met Margaret, the elderly artist whose eyes sparkled with insights that felt magical against Sarah's spiraling thoughts. Margaret saw something she didn't. An artist flickering beneath years of sacrifice and doubt. Yet, as their conversation breathed life into Sarah's dreams, those very same dreams became a battleground. The elegance of the gala juxtaposed against her own rough edges had her questioning whether she belonged anywhere, let alone amidst the glimmering elite. The moment Margaret urged her to unveil her artwork to the assembled crowd felt like standing on a tightrope swaying dangerously between ambition and rejection. What if they laughed? What if they judged? The tightening knot in her stomach reflected all the insecurities she had fought so hard to bury under the weight of her daily life. As she braced herself for the reveal, Sarah's heart thudded with unease, a mix of anticipation and dread coursing through her veins. Who was she to think she could present herself and her art to those who already looked down on her? Yet, here she was, lost in a crowded room that felt increasingly like a prison. The shimmering lights brightened the shadows lurking within her, pressing harder with each thought and judgment. Could she confront her past, the way she'd long hidden her talent? And if she did, what would truly emerge from the depths of her uncertainty? Steeling herself, Sarah sensed the looming risk that even one misstep could shatter the fragile resolve she built within. The closet was closing in, but amidst the chaos, a fire began to blaze within her, illuminating an unseen path, and yet the doubts remained as a solid wall between her and that fragile dream. As Sarah leaned against the cool wall of the closet, Margaret's words danced in her mind. The possibilities flared, igniting her latent creativity, but the weight of self-doubt chained her to the floor. Who was she, really, if not just a nurse, a mother, someone who spent her days mending the broken but never tending to her own incomplete canvas? The invitation to share her art felt like a dare, a challenge that left her suspended between hope and fear. The scuffle of shoes echoed through the narrow space as voices carried her insecurities, critiques she anticipated before she even faced the audience. She could hear the laughter, feel the eyes combing through her outfit. It pulled at her chest, squeezing until she gasped for air. But before she could retreat deeper into self-protection, a flicker of courage enveloped her. She remembered Margaret's touch, the way it steadied her when their conversation focused on passion rather than judgment. What if she reframed this moment, not as an unveiling, but as a celebration? What if others were not vultures circling her demise, but fellow explorers longing for authenticity? With each passing heartbeat, Sarah summoned fragments of the artist she had subjugated for years under layers of responsibilities. The fire inside kicked up a notch, fueled by visions of canvases splattered with vibrant colors, her fingers dancing across the brush, and the joy that once accompanied each stroke. It was her, unapologetically. She envisioned the audience, not as patrons but as peers intrigued by genuine expression. What could she share with them? Would they see the beauty of her struggles, the depth behind her abstract lines? The moment shifted, transforming a challenge into an opportunity. With renewed determination, she pushed against the weight of doubt. Navigating through the closet door, Sarah caught her reflection. The woman staring back was still afraid, but caught in a moment of potential rebirth. She exhaled slowly, the warmth of self-acceptance wrapping around her like a comfort blanket. Her heart raced with a new rhythm, beckoning her forward. Stepping into the chaos of the gala felt like plunging into cold water. Lights flashed and laughter swirled around her, but she stood grounded. Every pair of eyes momentarily locked onto her, drawing lines of connection rather than judgment. Then Margaret's voice broke through the murmurs. "Sarah! Ladies and gentlemen, our artist!" she proclaimed with an infectious enthusiasm. In that instant, her feet carried her to the small makeshift stage at the end of the room. She shook slightly, the echoes of concern prompting her mind to question one last time, but in that moment, she shrugged it off. The audience had gathered, and a hush descended, mingled with curiosity. Sarah glanced down at the framed pieces beside her, the work she had crafted in secret, lines and shadows capturing her emotions. She remembered the hours spent in solitude, creating something that felt honed from the essence of herself. She cleared her throat, preparing to deliver her heart instead of rehearsed lines, and spoke with a voice that held both tremor and strength. Art reflects the unvarnished truths we fear to show ourselves. As she continued, the atmosphere shifted, tension lifting slightly. Conversations hushed as the crowd remained captive to her unpolished honesty. The smiles that gradually grew across faces held echoes of recognition, a shared humanity and vulnerability. What started as a mere presentation began transforming into a shared experience of growth. With every word she spoke, her shoulders lightened, the chains clattering to the floor. The fire inside grew, igniting a wave of confidence she hadn't realized lay dormant. Just then, she caught Evan's gaze across the room. He stood with his friends, arms crossed but eyes wide, a flicker of surprise dancing across his features. Empowerment surged numbly beneath her skin. What if she could inspire him, too? Eager anticipation swirled within her as Sarah embraced the momentum of the moment. A rush of clarity struck as she recalled how reluctant she had been to embrace the gala in the first place. This encounter had become a crucible of transformation, a pivotal step toward claiming herself. But just as Sarah felt the quiet thrill of victory bubbling up, a familiar figure drifted toward her, shadowed in silk and ivory. The air around them felt charged, every heartbeat echoing an unspoken challenge. Could she maintain this newfound strength against all adversities, even as a confrontation loomed? Sarah straightened, staring at an unexpected rival appearing out of the glimmering crowd, uncertainty colliding with burgeoning resolve. The moment of truth lay just ahead, and within her, a tempest began to brew. Could she stand firm amidst the storm? The crowd shifted as the familiar figure approached, sharp and poised, a silhouette of elegance against the backdrop of color and laughter. Claire, her former colleague and wearied rival, had always represented the expectations Sarah had long grappled with. Claire's presence loomed like a storm cloud, filling the air with tension and a hint of intimidation that had historically overwhelmed Sarah. With each step Claire took, Sarah felt the little flickers of doubt attempt to creep back in, whispering insidious thoughts into her mind. The echoes of past comparisons resurfaced, moments when Claire's sharp wit had cut deep, leaving Sarah feeling less than adequate in every professional arena they shared. But the previous moments of courage and self-acceptance clung to her now, a protective armor as she steadied herself. "Sarah," Claire purred, the sweetness in her voice undercut by an edge that raised the hairs on Sarah's arms. "I didn't realize you had taken up painting. How fascinating." The false admiration was palpable, and Sarah sensed the challenge behind Claire's words, ready to pounce. Gritting her teeth, Sarah commanded herself to keep her gaze steady, recalling the warmth and authenticity she'd felt on stage moments before. "Thank you, Claire. It's been a journey of rediscovery." She felt the weightiness of the moment trap them in a fragile standoff, two competing forces in the midst of a beautiful celebration. Claire's smile flattened into something calculating as she glanced at the paintings. Sarah noticed the slight upward tilt of her chin, a tell that Claire had come to assert dominance. "I'd love to learn from you, being an expert nurse and all. This work must be a delight, just as long as you can pull it off." The insinuation was clear. Claire had aimed to belittle, hoping to sow seeds of doubt. But Sarah breathed through the insult, pulling on the awareness she'd cultivated in her speech. Confidence flickered anew. "It's about vulnerability, isn't it? Creating from our honest selves rather than comparing our truths." Each word fell like a hammer on glass, crystal clear but sharp. The crowd around them shifted slightly, catching the conversation's tension. Eyes flitted from one woman to the other, electricity crackling in the air. As Claire attempted to mask her discomfort with a sweetly condescending laugh, Sarah leaned into the challenge. "You were always so good at showcasing your capabilities without ever touching upon something real," Sarah pressed, her voice steady despite the whirlwind she felt inside. "But artistic expression often comes from wearing our scars, doesn't it?" There it was, the pulse of authenticity ringing through her, striking a chord of determination. Claire leaned closer, her expression shifting between offense and intrigue. "You think this emotional exhibition is enough to make a mark? Do you really believe you can compete with established artists?" The question hung heavy, tapping into insecurities Sarah had fought so hard to overcome. But rather than spiral, she seized the moment and confronted her own motivations. This was no longer about artistic competition. This was her story transforming against the backdrop of doubt. "It's not competing, Claire. It's connecting. You should try it sometime." Something flickered behind Claire's mask of confidence, a crack forming in her certainty. For the first time, Sarah saw vulnerability reflected back, crystallizing the impact of her words. As she turned slightly to step away from what could become a toxic battle, she caught Evan's eye once more. His expression had shifted from surprise to interest, knowing perhaps that this moment was a significant turning point for Sarah. There was power in standing her ground. She was no longer the ghost of self-doubt, but a burgeoning force. Yet as Claire's face fell from spirited defiance to something darker, the realization settled in that this encounter could ignite a much bigger conflict. While Sarah had claimed a powerful part of herself, what would be the cost of stepping into her truth? The air around them thickened as she made her way back towards the crowd, feeling the aftershocks of confrontation reverberating in her chest. She needed to chat with Evan, to explore the ember of connection she felt before it vanished into the background noise. But the growing tension with Claire made her question whether the choice to be authentic would come at an even steeper price. As she approached Evan, the events of the night began swirling through her thoughts, both a promise of growth and the need for continued vigilance against adversity. Would this new boldness inspire others, or would it invite further challenges from those who thrived on competition? The fear pulsed through her as the intrigue of possibilities grew. The weight of impending decisions loomed ahead, ready to shift the path she was chosen to navigate. Just then, a whispered threat from Claire danced in the back of her mind, teasing the very foundations of her newly reclaimed strength. What higher stakes would this night reveal? What had she truly awakened within herself that could shatter or uplift her world? As Sarah approached Evan, the vibrant atmosphere blurred in her periphery. The laughter and clinking of glasses seemed distant, overshadowed by her own introspection. She had tasted a glimpse of self-assertion, but the accompanying apprehension thrummed within her, a reminder that each revelation brought as much fear as it did strength. "Hey, there you are." Evan smiled, his eyes bright with genuine warmth. "I was looking for you." His sincerity stirred something in her, prompting a counterbalance to the lingering threats of her confrontation with Claire. "I was just caught up," Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. She tried to redirect her thoughts, to contemplate the glowing moment of standing her ground against Claire, yet the tension remained. How long could she maintain this newfound strength without facing repercussions? "You looked incredible up there," he continued, his admiration evident. "Your paintings have a real spark. I can see how personal they are." The words washed over her, igniting flickers of pride, but also surfacing vulnerabilities she'd thought she'd contained. "Thank you," she replied, the corner of her mouth twitching into a smile. She wanted to believe him. Still, Claire's insinuating smoke lingered, tainting her thoughts. What if this moment was fleeting? Would it dissolve under scrutiny like so many of her previous attempts to assert herself? "Have you thought about showcasing more works?" he probed, his curiosity genuine. "I think you should." Their conversation cascaded into a comfortable rhythm, yet Sarah couldn't shake the gnawing anxiety that flared every time Claire crossed her mind. The pressure of expectations had crushed her many times before, leaving her breathless and uncertain. She didn't want to retreat into that life again. "Actually, I'm thinking of doing a series," she confessed, the thrill of the idea igniting a spark she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. It might explore the contrast between vulnerability and strength. The words tumbled forth, buoyed by excitement, but the subtle reminders of doubt pulled at her confidence. Could she genuinely navigate such a sensitive landscape? "Vulnerability and strength," Evan repeated thoughtfully, nodding. "I think that's an incredible theme. It resonates with so many people. You have a unique perspective." The way he positioned her work as valuable was liberating. It lent richness to her thoughts, unearthing notions of resilience she had long buried. She had fought for authenticity amid the bluster of competition, and yet here stood Evan, encouraging her to lean deeper into it. The excitement of her potential unfurled, but with it, the looming specter of Claire's challenge loomed darker. What avenues of conflict lay just ahead? "I appreciate that, Evan." A smile tugged at her lips again. There was a sense that every moment she spent essentially before Claire was an invitation to discover more about herself and her own boundaries. But even as hope blossomed, shadows flickered. As they walked together, exploring the crowd, she noticed Claire at the edge of their line of sight, engaged in conversation, yet her gaze flicked intermittently toward Sarah and Evan. The subtle shift in her demeanor, a tightness around the lips, a sharp glance, spoke volumes. Sarah could feel it like a weight pressing against her chest. Claire's presence was a reminder that the world of ambition often carried sharp elbows, a reality that could resurface at any moment, costlier than she anticipated. Every choice had potential repercussions, every step forward could invoke opposition, and seeking her truth didn't guarantee safety. With a shaky breath, Sarah considered the layers ready to unfold. Deciding to embrace her vulnerabilities while bracing for conflict was a tightrope walk. The call toward self-acceptance pulled against the tension of anticipated grief, but clarity emerged. If she hadn't yet confronted her fears, she needed to. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah turned to Evan, hesitating just long enough to gauge his reaction. "What do you do when the pressure mounts, and it feels like you're caught in someone else's storm?" His expression shifted, a mixture of surprise and contemplative thought. "You face it head on, don't shy away. That's when you find out who you really are." The words hung in the air like a warning bell. Pressing her lips together, Sarah felt the echo of his advice within. It wouldn't be about merely surviving the storm. This was her chance to navigate it, to pave her own path amid adversity. What consequences awaited Sarah beyond this night of both revelation and confrontation? Would she muster the courage to weather the storm, or would it become another chapter of fear and retreat? With a sudden gust, the answer seemed poised, just out of reach, waiting to be uncovered in the most unexpected of places. As Sarah drew in a steadying breath, she felt the buzz of the gathering encircle her, ethereal yet imposing. Her heart drummed an anxious rhythm, a reminder of the weight of the path of authenticity she had embarked upon. Each step forward now carried the echoes of her past. She felt the tug of familiarity as she caught the glimmer of her former self, the quiet artist who let others dictate her worth. Evan's presence was a comforting balm against this swelling tide of doubt. "Let's check out the art corner." His suggestion was light and unassuming, but for Sarah it was laden with significance. Each canvas housed her secrets, her struggles made visible, and now they were poised to confront her directly. As they approached, Sarah grew aware of the increasing warmth shadowing her resolve. What if she wasn't enough? The creeping self-doubt was a companion she recognized all too well. The intimate tales behind her paintings spiraled into the spotlight. They revealed her dramas, hopes, and disappointments, raw reflections that danced in the mind's eye for any who cared to see. "Look at this piece." Evan tugged her attention to a vibrant canvas detailing a tumultuous storm brewing over a tranquil sea. "It's beautiful and chaotic, just like life, right?" A twinkle sparkled in his eyes, but Sarah felt a shiver crawl down her spine. "Chaos," she echoed, anchoring to that word as it thrummed through her, a reminder of the precarious balance she needed to maintain in her own life. Yes, but do we really embrace it? The question was surprisingly candid, reflecting the turmoil that churned within. Evan regarded her thoughtfully. Embracing chaos allows for creativity, but it also teaches us about resilience. Life's storms can lead to profound insight if we pay attention. The fabric of his conversation wove around her, but the excitement in her chest was tinged with uncertainty. As they gazed over the tapestry of works displayed, Sarah's mind spiraled into contemplation. What did embracing her chaos mean for her? To reveal herself fully in her artwork was to risk vulnerability, to maintain her artistic integrity amid scrutiny and competition. Her breath hitched as thoughts of Claire pressed in again. Would they clash like opposing waves, or could she find clarity within the storm? Emerging from her reverie, she locked eyes with Evan. What if accepting my vulnerability opens the floodgates for criticism? The tremor in her voice betrayed her lingering worries, thoughts she had concealed as she took steps toward growth. Without challenge, how will you ever understand your true potential? He said, his mentorship guiding her to another layer of self-discovery. The strongest art often stems from the deepest vulnerability. Maybe this is your moment to flip the narrative. His words ignited something deep within her, a flicker of courage that had started to dim. The notion that she could turn her fears into a source of strength poured new life into her aspirations. But as she found solace in this realization, the weight of Claire's imposing shadow lingered, tugging at her thoughts with whispered doubts. The pressure mounts when I'm convinced I should be a certain way. What if I create, and it isn't enough? There was a grappling honesty in her admission. Then it's not the right audience, Evan replied firmly. Art doesn't require a filter. It requires honesty. The tension in her heart loosened slightly, but just as she began to savor the weightlessness of acceptance, her gaze flickered toward the gathering. Claire stood across the room, arms crossed, a predator eyeing its prey. There was no mistaking the challenge in Claire's stare, a reminder that even if Sarah embraced her truth, opposition was not distant. In that moment, Sarah understood the stakes. Facing her fears and asserting herself required more than mere resolve. It demanded a confrontation, a reckoning that would not only validate her growth, but redefine her boundaries. With a sudden clarity piercing through her anxiety, Sarah turned to Evan. I need to do this. I need to confront Claire. A pause hung thick between them, pregnant with unspoken challenges and inevitable revelations. Then we battle together, Evan said, his tone resolute. She felt empowered, yet apprehensive. What awaited her in the balance between courage and confrontation? Knowing the next moments would either breathe life into her aspirations or force her back into the shadows was daunting. But for the first time, the thrill of the impending conflict met her determination. As she prepared to face Claire, Sarah felt the pull of a revelation she had yet to fully grasp. To thrive creatively, she would have to confront not just her external adversary, but her internal fears. What awaited her next? The prospect of this battle, tangible yet elusive, hovered like a storm cloud on the horizon, threatening rain yet promising growth, a sliver of potential she had yet to explore. As Sarah took a deep breath, the chaos of emotions within her surged. She had felt anchored by Evan's presence, but now the prospect of confronting Claire ignited a restless energy. It was time to move forward. She tried to summon a presence of mind that would carry her through this tumultuous encounter, yet self-doubt wrapped cold fingers around her heart. Let's go, she said, her voice steadier than she felt, a facade of bravery cloaking her turmoil. Navigating through the crowd, she became acutely aware of the energy surrounding her. Laughter and conversations intertwined in a tapestry of social connection she had always admired from afar. Each laugh felt like a reminder of her own limitations. Would she belong here truly? The distance between who she was and who she wanted to be felt vast and treacherous. As they approached Claire, Sarah felt a pulse quicken in her veins. Claire's posture was rigid, an elegant sculpture of dominance. Every fiber of Sarah's being screamed to retreat, yet the thought of retreating into silence was one she could no longer accept. Sarah, Claire's tone was smooth and edged with superiority as she met her gaze. So glad you showed up. I was wondering whether you would make an appearance. Right, well here I am, Sarah replied, her words firing like bullets from an unseen gun. Claire's sharp smile did little to assuage Sarah's nerves. I would have thought you'd be too intimidated by all this. She gestured dismissively at the art around them. But I suppose even the timid can surprise. Intimidation won't dictate my choices any longer. Sarah responded, the words surprising even her. The sense of authority in her voice felt foreign yet exhilarating. It was a tiny spark of the person she had been striving to become. Is that so? Claire raised an eyebrow, leaning in slightly, interested yet cautious. Which version of you exactly? In that instant, Sarah realized that Claire had unwittingly unveiled a moment of clarity. The question hovered, poised for attack, inviting Sarah to engage with her deeper self. It was a door wide open, and she could either step through or turn away. I'm the version that's willing to embrace chaos, to bring my truth into my work without fear of judgment. She inhaled sharply as her heart raced. Could she truly mean this? The conversation shifted. Suddenly their surroundings faded, and it was just the two of them in that moment, each demanding, each revealing. Claire's smirk faltered, her facade slightly cracking at the edges. And what does embracing chaos look like for you? The question was layered, laced with genuine curiosity that belied the prior thinly veiled hostility. Rather than retreat into defensive silence, Sarah pressed forward. It means shattering the idea of perfectionism that has chained me to mediocrity. It means allowing my work to reflect my reality, however raw or imperfect that may be. The truth of her words sliced through the air, heavy yet liberating. A silence enveloped them, an acknowledgement of mutual vulnerability crouching beneath the tension. Claire remained quiet, and as Sarah gauged her reaction, she sensed a shift. It was not acceptance, but perhaps understanding. Still clutching her cup, Sarah felt an undercurrent of triumph. It wasn't just about confronting someone else. It was about standing firmly in her own space, claiming her right to be. With every breath, she tasted a hint of freedom. Interesting perspective, Claire said after a pause, her tone shifting toward a subtle respect. Just be wary. The art world can be unforgiving. I'm ready for whatever lies ahead. With those words, Sarah articulated a resolution she had been inching toward, that her art was hers to define, and its value was not contingent on external validation. The conversation dwindled, leaving behind an electric tension that merged uncertainty and possibility. As she turned away, invigorated by the encounter, Sarah felt lighter, even amidst the chaos. Did you mean what you said? Evan appeared beside her, concern etching his features. Every word, she replied, her pulse still rapid with adrenaline and hope. But unease crept back, a nagging shadow whispering that confronting Claire was merely a beginning. What would it cost her? What would she encounter in the depths of her artistic journey? As she anxiously scanned the crowd, her eyes landed on a small door at the far end of the hall, half open, beckoning her like a secret passage. What lay beyond would either further her personal exploration or confront even deeper struggles. The decision hung in the air, waiting for her to act, a new challenge waiting to be unraveled. Sarah took a step toward the door, her heart racing faster than before, knowing that sometimes, to discover one's true self, one must first embrace the unknown. What awaited her on the other side? Was this hidden place meant for revelation or more chaos? The anticipation surged within her as she prepared to push through. As Sarah crossed the threshold of the small door, a wave of uncertainty washed over her. The narrow hallway appeared dimly lit, and the muted sounds of the gathering faded behind her, enveloped in an almost surreal silence. Each step felt weighted, as if she were stepping into the very essence of her unacknowledged fears. But the unresolved energy within her propelled her forward. She emerged into a cramped storage room scattered with canvases and miscellaneous art supplies, remnants of creativity vying for attention. Sarah paused to take in her surroundings, the smell of paint thinner and aged wood mingling with the faint aroma of turpentine. Piles of half-finished works loomed over her, each hinting at potential stories yet to be told. This was a sanctuary of sorts, raw, unrefined, and uncensored. Perhaps it's not chaos, she mused, allowing the thought to swirl in her mind. Maybe it's authenticity. Her fingers grazed the edge of an unfinished canvas depicting a tumultuous landscape, swirls of color merging into darker shades, distortions that echoed the storms raging inside her. Suddenly, a voice broke through her reflection. Not what you expected, huh? Startled, Sarah turned to see a young woman perched casually on a stack of canvases. The girl had an air of nonchalance, her paint-streaked overalls a badge of the creative battles fought and won. "What are you doing here?" Sarah asked, a blend of curiosity and caution in her tone. "Just hiding out," the girl replied, tilting her head with a mischievous smile. "Sometimes it gets overwhelming out there. This is the safe haven, The real art happens behind the scenes. She waved her arm theatrically, gesturing to the chaotic assembly of brushes and hues. "Do you always avoid the spotlight?" Sarah inquired, drawn into the girl's unassuming confidence. "Only when I need to." The girl's gaze met Sarah's. "You don't seem like you're here by accident. What's your story?" Sarah hesitated, the weight of her journey heavy on her shoulders. "I'm trying to find my voice in all this," she confessed, her eyes flicking to the unfinished art surrounding them. "I thought confronting someone would help me, but now I feel lost." A knowing smile broke across the girl's face. "You want to find your truth, but you're standing in the shadows of others. Art is about self-discovery, not imitation." The words pierced through Sarah's lingering doubts, igniting a flicker of revelation. "But how do you do that? How do you drop the fear of judgment and create from within?" "By embracing the chaos," the girl replied, leaning closer, a subtle intensity behind her light-hearted demeanor. "Art isn't about perfection, it's about expression. If something feels raw and messy, it's often more powerful than you'd think. Let go of expectations and just paint your feelings." Taking a deep breath, Sarah embraced this idea. She remembered Claire's biting comments and how they had once defined her narrative. "So you're saying my struggles can transform into something meaningful?" The girl nodded vigorously. "Exactly. Each piece tells a story. Yours can be messy, unrefined, but also uniquely yours. Dive deeper into those feelings, your fears, your chaos. Allow it to pour onto the canvas without editing." Sarah's pulse quickened with each of the girl's words. It was an invitation to step beyond the confines of her insecurities and into a realm of self-acceptance. "Let me show you something," the girl said, hopping down from the canvases. She disappeared for a moment and returned with a brush splattered with vibrant color. "Here, take this." Sarah felt the weight of the brush in her hand, a symbolic brimming empowerment pressing against her palm. She looked at the blank canvas before her, the expansive potential begging for her expression. Feeling the surge of determination coursing through her, she turned to the girl, voice steady. "This is what embracing chaos feels like? Go for it," the girl encouraged, eyes twinkling with excitement. With a deep breath, Sarah stepped closer, ready to unleash the stories pent up inside her. As the brush met the canvas, she felt herself fade into the background, the chaos transforming into a symphony of her emotions. But even as the colors danced to life, a flicker of doubt crept in behind the scenes. Was she truly ready to confront the freedom of vulnerability in her work? Would she regret this decision, or would it become a catalyst for true transformation? What lay ahead in this exploration? Could she endure the inevitable storms that might follow her bold step into authenticity? With uncertainty fueling her momentum, Sarah dove in, knowing the answer to her journey was only just beginning. As Sarah applied the brush to the canvas, the colors erupted like flares, each stroke catalyzing something buried deep within her. The vibrant pigments seemed to pull her apart and put her back together in the same motion, each chaotic swirl capturing the essence of her pent-up emotions. Fear, frustration, and excitement collided, bubbling to the surface as she painted with reckless abandon. This was not the polished, pristine art she had aspired to create. It was wild and messy, like a reflection of her own soul. She hardly noticed the young girl leaning against a stack of easels, observing her with rapt attention. "That's it! Feel it, Sarah!" the girl encouraged, her eyes sparkling. "No need for control. Your truth will find its way to the canvas." With each new color, Sarah felt the constriction in her chest loosen. Memories of criticism and self-doubt threatened to surface, but they began to dissipate in the stream of creativity. What had loomed over her for so long, fear of judgment, fear of failure, faded into the background noise of her focus. She was creating for herself. Yet, as these feelings surged, they were intermingled with another wave of anxiety. The fear of inadequacy. She questioned if what she was putting on the canvas would ever be accepted or understood. What if the piece was too personal, too raw? The thought of sharing it, of exposing her vulnerable self, made her pulse quicken with trepidation. Glancing over her shoulder at the girl, Sarah asked, "What if it's not good enough? What if people don't see what I see?" The girl's expression softened, and she stepped closer. "Art isn't about validation from others. It's meant to challenge you, provoke thought, a dialogue between you and the canvas. The moment you create with the expectation of approval, you stifle your truths. You have to let it be what it is, even if it's uncomfortable." Taking a deep breath, Sarah channeled her concerns into each brushstroke. She felt a warmth building in her, an urging to express not just her fears, but also the hopes and aspirations buried beneath. What emerged was a tumultuous landscape of color, vivid yellows clashing against deep blues, swirling into shapes that seemed to reach out and grab her. It was chaos, but it was also liberation. As the hours slipped away, the background noise of the gathering outside faded into an almost trance-like hum. It felt as if she had stumbled into a parallel universe, one where she could exist authentically. And then, without warning, she found herself at a crossroads in her creation. She stood before a blank space in the canvas, a void that begged for resolution. This was the moment when she knew a choice lay ahead. Would she follow the instinct to splash a shadowy layer over her work, concealing her vulnerabilities? Or would she show the true depth of her emotions, regardless of the potential critique? The girl's voice echoed in her mind. Embrace the chaos. Gritting her teeth, Sarah plunged the brush into a dark shade, letting it collide violently with the vibrancy of her creation. The two clashed, yet somehow created a visceral harmony, a striking representation of her internal struggle. Her heart raced with fear and excitement. This was her voice emerging from the fog. But just as the adrenaline invigorated her, a heavy veil of self-doubt blanketed her thoughts. Doubts crept back in, whispering, insisting that this journey might lead to more discomfort than resolution. Questions about her identity and the potential backlash of revealing her true self spun like a cyclone in her mind. Just then, the girl spoke again, her voice steady and calming. You're transforming, Sarah, but transformation brings questions, internal chaos. That's where strength lies. Gazing at the canvas, Sarah saw not just a landscape, but a microcosm of her tumultuous spirit, the strife and conflict mirroring her hesitations. She realized that this was a step forward, yet it didn't quell her underlying fear. She knew she had a choice to make. Could revealing this chaotic expression of herself lead to acceptance, both from others and from herself? Or would it fortify the barriers she was working to dismantle? As Sarah considered her next moves, a new thought sparked in her mind. What if this artistic journey was merely the beginning of an exploration that encompassed her entire life? Injecting fierce determination into her brushstrokes, she obliterated the blank space with newfound intensity, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Yet the undercurrents of uncertainty still loomed. What awaited her in the outside world? Would her bold artistic honesty resonate? Or would it echo back with scorn and judgment? The clamor from the gathering resumed, pulling her fragmented thoughts back to reality. The moment felt like a summons to face the very truth she had been avoiding. What would happen when she finally stepped back to see her creation in its entirety? And what revelations awaited her as she moved forward into the light? The answers danced on the brink of her subconscious, beckoning her to explore the depths of her potential. As Sarah stepped back to admire her work, the tempest of emotions roiling within her became almost tangible, resonating throughout the air like the vibrations of a plucked string. The canvas bore the weight of her vulnerability, yet the chaotic brushstrokes felt strangely liberating. In her mind, a cacophony erupted, an internal dialogue that questioned her every decision. What if no one understands this? She thought, dissecting the chaotic colors and swirls. But alongside that voice came another, softer, but insistent. This is you. Is there not power in showing what you truly are? But it was more than just the painting. It was a confrontation with her identity. Society demanded neat, precise definitions: artist, professional, woman. Yet here she was, a whirlwind of contradictions, and the path to embracing those contradictions felt daunting. A sudden, loud cheer erupted from the gathering outside, jolting her back to the reality of the event. The sound ignited a flash of urgency within her. This was a moment of reckoning, a pivot point where the echoes of societal expectations met personal truths. Taking a step closer to the canvas, she held her breath and listened to the chaos within her. How could she reconcile these clashing worlds? I can't let them dictate who I am, Sarah muttered, though uncertainty coiled tightly in her gut. Even as the voices urged her to acknowledge her worth through her art, she still feared that the chaotic expression she had feared exposing would be met with derision. What if this was all simply an exercise in futile self-indulgence? With a forceful resolve, she picked up a clean brush. The fibers were pure, untouched, representing a fresh start. This piece was still malleable, still her own. She could breathe life to her truth, rather than a disclaimer of her shortcomings. Yes, it's messy, she whispered as she dipped it into the vibrant yellows again. But so is life, She poised the brush over a particularly chaotic section, hesitating. What if this stroke was her chance to transcend perceptions? What if she could embed a message of resilience and authenticity into the heart of the painting? As she unleashed color with deliberate focus, her thoughts turned inward. Art could communicate complex narratives that spoke not only to individuality, but also to collective experiences, a bridge connecting lives through shared vulnerabilities. Amidst her compilation of feelings, the innocence of the young girl's approach lingered in her mind. "Your truth will find its way," echoed like a mantra, gently nudging her towards clarity. Would she choose to silence herself, or amplify the narrative clamoring to escape? With renewed fervor, Sarah cast her doubts aside and forged onward, capturing her emotional landscape with each stroke. She was not merely adding colors, she was creating a manifesto. This will be a testament to her growth, not only as an artist but as a woman confronting the tight confines of her self-doubt. In the back of her mind, a thought flickered. What if this moment of clarity launched her into a realm of artistic exploration she never thought possible? Not just with this piece, but beyond. The idea held its own weight. It was electric. As the clamoring grew louder from the gathering, beckoning her to step outside, Sarah paused. She needed to assess the entirety of her creation. Relief washed over her. She had transitioned from chaos into a bittersweet symphony. With one final stroke, she sealed her decision. She would embrace the rawness of her truth, forging connections through shared humanity rather than perfection. But in the midst of that triumph, doubts smoldered beneath the surface. Would her boldness be celebrated, or would it serve to further isolate her from the very connections she sought to forge? Determined to face what lay ahead, she took a deep breath, turned toward the door, ready to step into the gathering. But as she did, her heart raced, not with fear, but powerful anticipation. Could she transform her vulnerability into strength in the eyes of those around her? The handle cool against her palm, she knew this moment was only the beginning. What greeted her on the other side could redefine the course of her artistic and personal journey, and the uncertainty trembled like an electric current. What awaited her on the other side of that door? Would her truth flourish, or wither away amidst the scrutiny? As Sarah stepped back into the bright lights and sounds of the gala, the weight of her journey coiled around her like an anchor. The room buzzed with activity, conversations ebbing and flowing, laughter resonating as if to drown out her anxieties. But she was transformed. The chaotic mural she had birthed behind closed doors now thrummed in her mind like a heartbeat, reminding her of the internal freedom she had claimed. Eyes focused on her, and for a moment, time slowed. The crowd parted slightly, creating a space where she could stand grounded, no longer merely a spectator in her own life. She felt the faint pull of the canvas she left behind, yet here she was, prepared to unveil the most authentic version of herself. Evan's encouraging smile cut through the noise. "You did it, Sarah," he whispered, his voice laced with admiration. "You owned it." In that moment, she recalled the young woman in the storage room, who had dared her to embrace chaos, lifting the veil of hesitation. This was a reminder that confronting one's truth was not an act of defiance, it was an act of honesty and bravery. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady yet alive with emotion, fueled by the residual warmth of self-acceptance. Taking a breath, Sarah stepped further into the gathering, seeking Margaret amidst the crowd. When she found her, the elderly artist's eyes lit up with encouragement, the flicker of support affirming the path Sarah had chosen. "Art is never just paint on a canvas, my dear. It is a testament to everything you are," Margaret whispered, and the words resonated deeply within Sarah. With steady resolve, Sarah strode to the center, the crowd's attention like a welcoming embrace rather than a judgmental glare. "Hello, everyone," she began, her voice clear as she sought connection. "I want to share a part of me." The murmurs softened, curiosity replacing the previous chatter. "I recently rediscovered my voice through art, but that journey took me deeper than I anticipated." She took a moment, her heart echoing the vulnerability she felt. "Life has often made me feel small, unworthy. But tonight I choose to celebrate chaos, not as an enemy, but as a catalyst for change." Evan's nod from the corner of her vision anchored her. "I've spent too long in the shadows, worried about judgment rather than embracing my truth." She unveiled the story behind her paintings, every layer a reflection of not just her fears, but also her strength, her longing, and ultimately, her hope. With each word, the crowd leaned in, attention hanging on every beat of her revelation. Reluctant doubts fluttered in her mind, but she pressed on. This isn't just about art. It's about accepting ourselves, all our messy parts. It's about vulnerability and the strength it reveals. The silence enveloped them like a blanket, and she felt a warm wave of acceptance surge from the audience. Those who once appeared like intimidating figures now seemed like fellow travelers navigating their own complexities. As she finished speaking, a soft applause rippled through the room, growing louder. She could scarcely breathe, overwhelmed by their acceptance, but even louder than the applause was an internal affirmation. She had not just confronted the crowd, she had confronted herself. Evan made his way through, pride radiating from him as he leaned in, saying softly, "You proved it, Sarah. You're an artist and your voice matters." The moment felt surreal, affirming that her transition from insecurity to confidence was indeed valid. At that moment, Claire appeared, her expression inscrutable, yet something different lingered in her eyes, perhaps acknowledgement or begrudging respect. The competitive edge in her demeanor softened as she approached, words lingering like an uninvited thought. "Your transparency is bold, Sarah. You caught me off guard, to say the least." The honesty of Claire's admission resonated with Sarah, offering a rare glimpse of mutual respect amid rivalry. "Thank you, Claire. I'm learning to embrace what lies beneath the surface." Claire offered a slight nod. The weight of their confrontation shifted. In the flickering light of social connection, Sarah now recognized a shift. The chaotic elements of her outside existence had started to align with her internal growth. The journey was far from over, yet she felt buoyed by the sense of belonging amidst the unfathomable unpredictability of life. She learned that every brushstroke, every unfiltered emotion she had chosen to express, now became a stepping stone into a broader narrative. One of acceptance, resilience, and creative authenticity. From across the room, Evan watched her, pride swelling in him, his friends too, joining in, marveling at the authentic Sarah they were witnessing emerge. And there, amidst laughter and applause, Sarah found herself transformed, the essence of her artistry resonating deeply within her newfound identity. No longer balanced precariously on the precipice of self-doubt, she was firmly planted, a testament to her journey, a powerful declaration of her worth as an artist, a mother, and most importantly, as herself. As the night continued, Sarah felt the call of possibility echoing through her. She was ready not only to share her art with the world, but to live that art, embracing the rhythms of life's complexities with renewed vigor. In every chaotic swirl that painted her canvases, she saw a reflection of her newfound truth, a reminder that to live fully means both embracing and expressing one's vibrant chaos. With a resolute heart, she smiled, ready to forge ahead into the next chapter of her artistic journey. Now, as you reflect on Sarah's incredible transformation, it's time to take action yourself. You need to subscribe now to not miss future exclusive emotional stories that will inspire your own journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every click makes a difference. Comment below your thoughts, reactions, and theories about Sarah's ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering conclusion. Your support is what helps these personal overcoming stories reach the hearts they need to touch.